Hello again, it's Chris Yates from the UK. Just going to talk some more about Unconditional Surrender. I posted a number of videos some time back which captured my solo playthrough of the game, and I commented that I was really very impressed with what the designer had done with the system. It's very innovative and refreshing ideas which have been very cleverly implemented in the game. The only sort of slight concern I had, which I mentioned on the last video, was that was the effect of the weather on the system. Now, all these strategic World War II games have different ways to sort of tackle the weather, and this game uses a perfectly plausible system where you essentially roll a dice in each season, and it gives you anything from fair to severe or possibly poor weather. I think for me that wouldn't be such a big issue, except for the reason that weather has such a large impact on the combat in the system. For those that have played, they will have experienced that, and essentially the gains that can be made in fair weather are essentially orders of magnitude greater than what you might hope to achieve in poor or severe weather. Now, in and of itself, maybe that's okay, except for the fact that you could just lose the game because the other guys had a series of good weather. I think you can potentially get seven turns of fair weather at the start of Barbarossa, and that I think would beat any Russian attempt to defend the motherland. And similarly, later in the war, if you had a long string of fair weather results, I suspect the Third Reich would struggle to survive. The other slight concern which knocks on from that is the way that you have multiple attacks in the system. Somewhat fewer on the poor weather turns, but you still get 2 or 3 attacks with as a mobile assault, and typically you're looking for those 6-1, 5-1 results. So there's quite a bit of die rolling and in those turns for not much gain, and because around about 2/3 of the year tends to be severe or poor weather in the main theatres, not in the desert, but certainly in Russia and on the Western Front. You've got a lot of wristage, a lot of die rolling for not much effect, and with the upshot that the game seems to be unnecessarily long because of those very long turns where not much is going on, but you still need to go through the process. And I was interested to hear Salvaster's suggested thoughts on this, that maybe just have assaults on poor and severe weather. In fact, he was suggesting doing away with the halving on the severe and the -2 on the poor turns. To me, that made the weather states very, very similar. I like the differentiation between the severe and the poor. In the severe, you halve the overall net sum, and in the poor you had the -2, and that gave you some distinction between the two weather states. So it seemed a bit bit too much. But there was no mention of possibly trying to contain the extremes of the weather in the system. Jay Muchney, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, put forward some house rules where he had a table of various weather states which were captured in the seasons, so you always know what you're going to get in a season, but not necessarily in what order. And that, I thought that was a very interesting idea. He also put forward some other ideas about snow and other effects. So I basically just borrowed the essence of what he was saying. So a straightforward table which will capture the sort of median of what was likely in the original game, without the big swings of weather, combined with the assault only option which Salvasta had mentioned. But I kept the halving in the severe weather, and just reduced the -2 to a -1 in the poor weather for any ground attacks. And I've set it up and I've played it through. I was very interested to see what would happen, particularly in the first winter. I think the view was that the first winter may be a bit of a blowout for the Germans, because they can keep on pushing in the poor weather. Of course, they actually get the automatic severe weather come December anyway, because of the first Russian winter. But that wasn't the case, and I really like what it did to the feel of the game. It seemed to shorten the poor weather turns by, I'm guessing, but I would say by about half. I mean, if you think that as the German you were typically having multiple mobile poor odds attacks, trying to get the extremes of the sort of 2d6 system. Here you just set up your attack. I've already got one assault. I'll commit 2 or 3 units. I may get a pushback. I can possibly advance and fill the space and maybe assault again. But the fact that you were probably only running 3 or 4 combined assaults over the front, rather than in sort of double digits of individual mobile assaults, just seemed to sort of push things on much more quickly, with potentially not much difference in the overall effect. So I thought I'd just let you know what I was doing. I'll try and post up the table for the weather of what I'm using. I've tried to minimise the other changes. I mean, I think that it's a truly a remarkable game in what it does. Might put a few off because of the rule book, but the rules now I think are very, very tight. I've often had have a quick query. The index is pretty thorough, and it normally addresses whatever it is that you're trying to resolve, and the support is still there online. So if you've not tried this one, certainly play it as is. But if you have played it before and you're thinking, oh, now we've got 4 or 5 months of poor weather to get through with multiple die rolls, and I probably need to do it because there's not much downside to sort of doing it, and there's not much advantage of not doing it, because you can't stockpile any unused production points. You just feel as though you're doing what you could do in the poor weather turns, and the time frame seems compressed, which I think is probably a good thing. So I'll stop it there, and probably put a couple of links or an attachment or something to the posting, and let us know what you think.